Religion is a very prominent part of culture, isn't it? Although perhaps not for everyone. There are about, 7.5 billion people in the world today, right? It may be that as many as 1 billion of those people don't practice a religion, don't claim to have any religious beliefs. I mean, every culture does have a spiritual tradition, a system of beliefs related to the world and to God or the gods and spirits and so on. But not every person. And the belief you do have can get you in trouble. The Christian crusading knights of Europe at the end of the 11th century were quite zealous in their effort to fight and kill not just Muslims but Jews as well. Muslim militants have attacked Christians in Egypt and Nigeria and the Philippines. Hindus and Muslims have fought one another in India and Pakistan. And the list goes on and on. Clearly, religion matters to people. And if something is that important to you, how would you react if someone else tried to change your religion to make you accept a different faith? It seems, for example, that around the 8th or 9th century, the leader of the Khazars, a people living around the Black and Caspian Seas, took a look at the Abrahamic religions, and in the end, he chose to convert to Judaism. Well, that's his right, isn't it? To choose his own faith. But what if he had actually commanded all his people to convert as well? And it's possible that he actually tried to do so. If so, he wouldn't be the only leader who tried to dictate religion to his people. By the 15th century, Persia and the Ottoman Turks were coming more and more into conflict with one another, both being Muslim cultures, but the Turks were zealously Sunni Muslim, which may be why the Safavid rulers of Persia made Shia Islam the official state religion, to help organize and motivate opposition to the Persian people against the Turks. And Iran is still Shia today, something like 95% of the country. But it doesn't always work out so well. These state-mandated religious conversions, the emergence of a new religious belief is often met with great distrust and even hostility. Something along those lines occurred during the 18th dynasty of Egypt after Amun-Hotep IV was crowned pharaoh around 1370 BCE. He was around 16 years old, we think, a young adult, and unlike his predecessors, Amun-Hotep IV was not inclined to pursue military conquests. That's not going to make the soldiers very happy. They only get paid if they go to war, invade another country. But Amun-Hotep didn't care. Being physically somewhat frail, he seems early on to have pursued a more spiritual existence, apparently spending a great deal of time contemplating the gods and seeking a more intimate relationship with one god in particular, a god named Aten. Now, Aten was another sun god, but unlike the national sun god Amun-Ra, the creator, who looks very human in his statues and images, Aten actually looks like the sun, with rays of light shining down from him over his people, nourishing them. Aten was the all-powerful life-giving sun, and the closer the young king grew towards Aten, the further he felt from the gods of his ancestors, like Amun-Ra. Finally, after only a few years in power, Amun-Hotep made a startling and revolutionary decision to abandon the polytheistic religion of the Egyptians and embrace a primitive monotheism. Essentially, he decided to reject the many gods of Egypt in favor of a single god, Aten. Now, why he would do something so remarkable is still debatable. Perhaps he sensed that the priests of Amun-Ra had grown too powerful, and so he rejected their god to weaken the priests. But then, if that was his goal, why choose to believe in a single god? Why, after centuries of polytheism, switch to monotheism? Well, for whatever reason he did it, Pharaoh Amun-Hotep IV and his famous wife Nefertiti really took this revolution to heart. He ordered the construction of a new capital city, Akhet-Aten, which means the horizon of Aten, and he ordered this city built on the west bank of the Nile River. Now, that may not mean anything to you or me, but the Egyptians worship the sun as a living god, right? And every day the sun rises up into the sky from the east and sets in the west, which, to the Egyptian way of thinking, meant that the home of the gods, the place where the sun slept at night, was in the west, which is therefore where you try to go when you die. So the west bank of the Nile River was reserved for the dead. Tombs, graves, pyramids, all in the west. The east bank of the river was for the living. All the major cities of ancient Egypt were built in the east. And here was a king of Egypt building his new city in the land of the dead, the west. A bit disturbing, as you might imagine. There was something else he had to change. His name. You see, the name of a pharaoh, his royal name, reflected whichever god he claimed to be descended from, which god he was closest to. But Amenhotep's name suggested that he was related to Amun, the god of the sun, a god that Amenhotep didn't even believe in. So he changed his name to Akhenaten, which means it is well with Aten. He changed the names as well of his family members to indicate their love of Aten, whether or not they really believed in this one god. And he brought them with him to his new capital, where the new art form depicted the pharaoh and his family not as perfect gods, but as playful people. No more endowments were made to the priests of the other gods, whom Akhenaten refused to recognize. In fact, the old temples were shut down, and any priest caught practicing the old polytheistic worship was severely punished, if not executed. Akhenaten was obviously quite serious about his religious revolution. But is that really the way to share and promote your faith? Successful mass conversions often have much to do with a charismatic leader and the power of proselytizing, missionaries. Akhenaten had no missionaries. He never really tried to teach his new faith to the people. As he could be expected, this religious revolution made the priests very unhappy. But it was certainly not only the priests who objected to this shocking transformation. The soldiers weren't happy. And the people? For over 1,000 years, Egyptians had worshipped many gods, and now here comes this strange king who says there's only one God? How would you react? He moves to the wrong side of the river. He tortures the old priests, the ones that you trust and depend on. Not a good way to win the hearts and minds of the people. Of course, most people lived outside the capital, and so they had little idea what was going on. But those people who did know certainly did not approve, and after Akhenaten's death, his ideas very quickly died as well. In fact, the end of this new monotheistic religion was brought about by a very young pharaoh, whose name you've probably heard before. Tutankhamun, the boy king. King Tut may have been young, but he was smart enough to see that his predecessor had made a lot of enemies for the royal family. It was time to go back to tradition.